English Story Times, Book 6, Story 10. The Watermelon Slice. Line 1. This is a big piece of watermelon. Big piece of watermelon. This is a big piece of watermelon. Question. What is this a? What is this a? Big piece of. Big piece of. What is this a big piece of? This is a big piece of watermelon. Line 2. The small black things in the watermelon, are seeds, The small black things in the watermelon are seeds. What are those small black things? Small black things. What are those small black things? The small black things in the watermelon are seeds. Line 3. Mangoes, olives, and peaches. Mangoes, olives, and peaches don't have seeds in them. Don't have seeds in them. They have a pit in them. Pit in them. Mangoes, olives, and peaches don't have seeds in them. They have a pit in them. Question. What are like seeds? What are like seeds, but much bigger? Mangoes, olives, and peaches don't have seeds in them. They have a pit in them. Line 4. Seeds are small, and pits are big, Seeds are small and pits are big. Between seeds and pits, which are small and which are big? Between seeds and pits, which are small and which are big? Between seeds and pits, which are small and which are big? Seeds are small and pits are big. Line 5. We can't be sure how ripe a whole watermelon is by looking at it. We can't be sure how ripe a whole watermelon is by looking at it. Question. What is uncertain about watermelon? What is uncertain about watermelon? We can't be sure how ripe a whole watermelon is by looking at it. Okay, line 6. A ripe watermelon is redder inside and sweeter tasting than a watermelon that isn't ripe. A ripe watermelon is redder inside and sweeter tasting than a watermelon that isn't ripe. Question. What kind of watermelon is redder inside than other watermelons? What kind of watermelon is redder inside than other watermelons? A ripe watermelon is redder inside and sweeter tasting than a watermelon that isn't ripe. Line 7. A whole watermelon is always cheaper than buying two halves. A whole watermelon is always cheaper than buying two halves. Question. What can you get, or rather, how can you get the best price for watermelon? How can you get the best price for watermelon? A whole watermelon is always cheaper than buying two halves. Line 8. By buying a half of a melon, you can tell better how ripe it is. So it's worth the extra cost. By buying a half of a melon, you can tell better how ripe it is. So it's worth the extra cost. Question. What is the best way to tell if the melon is ripe? What is the best way to tell if the melon is ripe? By buying a half of a melon, you can tell better how ripe it is, so it's worth the extra cost. Your reading out loud goal, here we go. This is a big piece of watermelon. The small black things in the watermelon are seeds. Mangoes, olives, and peaches don't have seeds in them. They have a pit in them. Seeds are small and pits are big. We can't be sure how ripe a whole watermelon is by looking at it. A ripe watermelon is redder inside and sweeter tasting than a watermelon that isn't ripe. A whole watermelon is always cheaper than buying two halves. By buying a half of a melon, you can tell better how ripe it is, so it's worth the extra cost.